Australia's longest highway, sits my home, Fitzroy Crossing. On New Year's Day, it was swept away. I'm going to go and check out my Auntie Natalie's house, which was one of the houses that was wrecked in January's floods. This is something that has affected my family quite deeply, and to see my family pretty heartbroken and uncertain is really sad. This is Bieundurry country, in the Central Desert in Western Australia's Kimberley region. Hey! Auntie Natalie used to live here, in the Aboriginal community Dalganya.
We are allowed to go into the house now without PPE and stuff, but we've had to have full, proper protective eyes and things because of all the mold that's grown, so.
Her home is just one of more than 100 in and around Fitzroy Crossing destroyed by floodwaters.
It's a whole lot of water going through my shed.
It was January when the Motawarra Fitzroy River rose to nearly 16 metres, swallowing cars, houses and livestock.
There's never been any stories. Like, we have stories for when there was stars that fell in the desert and why the Bieundurry side walked up this side. There's nothing in our history, nothing to prepare us for this.
Natalie was forced to watch on as her community was destroyed.
And there was a point where I just woke up instantly because it was just silent. And I realised the water was just under the floor. And I was standing in the kitchen and I could hear this banging underneath. But it was wallabies that had been taken by the rip underneath the house, and they were trying to come up for air but hitting the bottom of the house, and I just stood there and I started crying.
More than 6 months later, the scars on the landscape and people remain.
It's heartbreaking. It's home. Country has had a really different energy because everybody's not here.
Despite recent promises of over $144 million in state and federal funding, it's still estimated it will take up to 3 years to get the Fitzroy Valley back on track.
My family asked me, when you move, go back to your community. Oh, well, I tell them that we're waiting for a house to build up down London. But I don't know how long does it take.
For months, this family has been living in basic emergency shelter.
I just want to go back home and live there at the London, So it's my sweet home, not the caravan park.
The state and federal governments say a new jointly funded accommodation program should help. But it is looking like temporary housing will be a long-term solution for some. Many communities in the Fitzroy Valley still don't have access to hot water, and some homes remain without electricity. Residents say they're facing bills in the thousands just to get basic infrastructure reconnected.
So the water came up to about 40 centimetres through the house. We had a flood that came through the Fitzroy catchment that was somewhere that ranged between a 1 in 200 and a 1 in 500 year flood event, and a sheer volume of water coming through Fitzroy Crossing, and that was enough to fill Sydney Harbour every 2.5 hours.
The state is primarily overseeing the rebuild and managing most federal funding.
Where people can store those belongings.
Rob Cossart is the recovery coordinator appointed by the WA government.
It's definitely a big task in terms of when we look at the scale of these floods and then what's ahead of us in terms of the community recovery.
That task includes rebuilding the vital Fitzroy Bridge, the only way for fresh food and fuel to get into town. While construction is underway, freight is forced to rely on a low-level crossing. It's already been washed away once.
There's elements of the recovery that are going well. There's elements of the recovery which still need a lot more focus and a lot more attention.
A joint government announcement last week of new funding grants means some homeowners can access up to $50,000 to rebuild their property.
So the state's made a commitment and working with the Commonwealth to undertake the cost of those repairs, refurbishments or rebuilds for all of those properties that are on ALT, on Aboriginal Lands Trust, Crown Reserve or owned by the state. So we're working through that process.
So when have you moved in here?
Last week.
But many don't know where to start.
Dining area. Like a quote to get the house done is around like $250,000. How do you work out those kind of costs? So that's when you kind of go, am I able to live back in that house, or do I have to work out a different arrangement for myself?
For those left homeless, returning to their communities means a respite from what they see as the traps of life in town.
Miss so many things, and want to try to get back there so our little kids want to have a good fun, and for ourselves make a big fire, make a big feed, for the kids and for us. And there's lots of room for the kids to play,
So like this kind of rain?
As the months tick by, people of the Fitzroy Valley say they need to be heard.
When we say country, people talk about it as a place. And it is, location, but it's also, how do I describe it? Like a being, it misses people. We're a part of it. So, when you have a vital organ or a vital thing taken away from you, it's really hard. Like you're ripped apart. If people can't return home, if that is, Australia's legacy in how we do response and recovery for these major events, it's horrifying, and we can do much better and look after all our people much better.